Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. As the sea of fire was compressed, it writhed madly. But Bai Xiaochun's hands contained the power to seal and suppress anything in existence, so even had the fire reacted more violently, he would still have been able to control it. The rumbling sounds continued as the sea of fire shrank down to 51 meters. Then it continued on, 45 meters, 39 meters. Howling, Bai Xiaochun pushed it down smaller and smaller. The sea of fire continued to react with explosive violence, but at this moment, Bai Xiaochun was a sovereign of flame. Under his control, the power of the fire didn't erupt outward, but was refocused inward to continue the compression. In the shortest of moments, it shrank from 39 meters to 24 meters. Within moments, it would surely be at 15 meters. As it shrank down, the flickering beginnings of an 18th color could be seen. Everyone in Heaven Master Hall waited with bated breath to see what would happen. Although the heavenly marquises couldn't necessarily see what was happening within the fire, the heavenly dukes and the Grand Heaven Master absolutely could. It was hard to say who did it first, but hisses of amazement could soon be heard. When the heavenly marquises heard such sounds, they were taken aback and looked over at the heavenly dukes. Soon, they realized that the 10 heavenly dukes all wore expressions of unprecedented solemnity. It was even true of Chen Haosong, whose hands were clenched so tightly into fists that blue veins bulged out on the backs of his hands. The heavenly marquise's eyes went wide, and yet, before they could even wrap their minds around what it all meant, Bai Xiaochun let out a shout at the top of his lungs. Compress. His eyes were completely bloodshot as the power of his cultivation base erupted, sent out through both of his hands as he pushed the flame down again, compressing it to a size of 15 meters. 15 meters was a line of demarcation. After this point, as long as he found the new color and latched onto it with his divine sense, then the 18th color would appear in full, and an 18-colored flame would appear. At the moment, it was possible to see that 18th color flickering within the 15-meter sea of fire. By now, everyone could see that unimaginable and indescribable new color. Although it would only appear for the briefest of moments, it was enough for the heavenly marquises to realize what was happening, and it caused their minds to reel. It's not going to work. He has to fail. He absolutely must fail. The heavenly marquises were starting to get very nervous. Today was the first time they had all joined forces and worked together, and yet something was happening that surpassed anything they could have ever imagined. Although not all of them lost control, many of them couldn't hold back from shouting in alarm. At some point, He Ming had come to stand nearby the Grand Heaven Master. When he heard everyone talking, he waved his hand swiftly through the air, causing the babbling heavenly marquises to shiver and bite their tongues. The Grand Heaven Master looked over at He Ming, but didn't say anything. A moment later, his gaze was back on Bai Xiaochun, the strange light in his eyes growing stronger by the moment. As for the 10 heavenly dukes, they could hardly breathe as they waited to see how things would turn out. As everyone looked on with rapt attention, Bai Xiaochun sweated profusely and stared deep into the 15-meter sea of fire. After a few breaths of time passed and he failed in his attempts to grab the 18th color, he decided that there was no need to waste time. Without any hesitation, he braced himself, and then shrank the sea of fire down again. Without any stopping, it compressed to a size of 9 meters. The 9-meter sea of fire struggled with violent force, causing intense and shocking rumbling sounds to echo out. The flickering of the flames was slowing down, making it possible for people to see it more clearly. As for Bai Xiaochun, his eyes shone with joy as he sent his divine sense shooting into the fire. In the blink of an eye, his divine sense was all the way inside the flame, where it latched onto the 18th color. An ear-splitting noise rang out, causing everything to shake. The 18th color had seemed weak moments before, but as soon as Bai Xiaochun's divine sense entered it, it exploded with dazzling light. It was as if that color had desired to rise to prominence no matter what the other 17 colors thought. It was almost like fireworks. Bai Xiaochun threw his head back and laughed uproariously as the 18th color grew strong and stable within the 9-meter sea of fire, shining with dazzling intensity alongside the other 17 colors. Also in that same moment, in the sky above Heaven Master Hall, the clouds began to swirl as numerous bolts of lightning began to slash back and forth. Thunder boomed, shaking all of the imperial palace. Even the golden dragon high in the clouds was shocked, and flew some distance away. The booming thunder also reached Heaven Master Hall. And yet, nobody paid any attention to it at all. They might as well have been deaf. Everyone was filled with waves of shock, completely ignoring everything in the outside world as they focused fully on Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was feeling quite excited. Even he had never thought that everything would go so smoothly. And because he didn't use his mask to cover up the effects, everything turned out vastly more shocking than anyone could have imagined. And that was exactly what he wanted. Struggling to control his breathing, he flashed a double-handed incantation gesture, causing the 18-colored sea of fire to slowly stabilize. Laughing heartily, he reached out toward the 9-meter sea of fire and made a grasping motion. Form, he said. The sea of fire rushed down into his hand, and the thunder outside Heaven Master Hall grew more intense. As for everyone inside the hall, they had seemingly lost the ability to even think, and they stared wordlessly as Bai Xiaochun collected up the sea of fire. It started out at 9 meters, and swirled around and around until it was 6 meters. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, half a meter. Shouting at the top of his lungs, Bai Xiaochun then slowly closed his fingers around the sea of fire. Time for 18-colored flame, he shouted, his voice surpassing the heavenly thunder to shake the entire hall. At the same time, the fire disappeared within his fist. The moment that his fingers closed around the fire was one of profound anxiety for everyone inside Heaven Master Hall. It was almost as if what he held in his hand was not fire, but rather, the hearts of the 89 heavenly marquises, the 10 heavenly dukes, and even the Grand Heaven Master. All eyes were fixed on his hand, and not a single voice could be heard. The Grand Hall was completely silent except for the rumble of the heavenly thunder. It was almost as if it existed outside of the passage of time. Bai Xiaochun thrummed with excitement and nervousness, and his bloodshot eyes were alive with joy. That was especially true when he noticed how everyone was staring at his right hand. He could see the serious look in the eyes of Chen Haosong and the dukes, and the nervousness of Zhao Xianglin and the other marquises. The pride Bai Xiaochun felt in this moment simply couldn't be described with words. He took a deep breath, and under the watchful eyes of all of the surrounding aristocrats, he very, very slowly began to open his fingers. However, even that tiny motion revealed some of the flame inside, and it provoked sharp gasps. Bai Xiaochun could not have been more pleased with the sound. Heart swelling, he continued to move with utmost slowness as he opened his fingers, revealing more and more of the flame, and causing even more gasps to ring out. Although he was hoping for more gasps, he could only move his fingers so slowly. Eventually, the full flame was revealed, floating above his palm. Raising his voice, he said, "Would anyone like to tell me how many colors you see in this flame?" The words were spoken in an overbearing and domineering tone, the type that brooked no disrespect, and was filled with incredible arrogance. The flame in his hand was visible for everyone to see, clear and there for all to behold. Within his pupils, vivid and clear and beautiful, was the reflection of an 18-colored flame. The entire hall was as silent as death. Bai Xiaochun's words, plus the scintillating 18-colored flame, caused all hearts to pound with indescribable levels of shock. The heavenly dukes and marquises were so stunned that they felt like their minds were being struck by 100,000 bolts of lightning. In fact, it was almost as if everyone present had been slapped in the face by a gigantic hand. It didn't take long for the silence to be broken by exclamations of shock. "Impossible. This is impossible. 18-colored flame. He's an earthly necromancer. The heavens have no eyes. There's no way that this is really happening." The first voice to ring out in the hall was like an ice cube thrown into a vat of boiling oil. Almost immediately, a cacophony of shouting filled the hall. The heavenly marquises' faces were all as ashen as death, their expressions those of utter disbelief. "This isn't real. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I can't believe he's actually an earthly necromancer. How could this be happening?" He was backed into a corner, faced with deadly calamity, and yet managed to come out on top. "Where hath gone the laws of the heavens? Where hath gone the truths of the great Tao?" The heavenly marquises felt as though their psyches had been battered by entire mountain ranges, and some of them even collapsed mentally. It wasn't that they lacked willpower, or that they were completely brainless. It was merely the fact that Bai Xiaochun had done something completely unexpected and heaven-defying. The decisive and dazzling way he had completely turned the situation around was something that they fundamentally couldn't accept. A moment ago, they had all been absolutely, positively confident that Bai Xiaochun would end up dead. Then, a moment later, that supreme confidence had been crushed into absolutely nothing. This was especially true of Zhao Xianglin, who was trembling and twitching, his eyes so bloodshot they were crimson. He looked crazed, possessed, as though the disbelief in his heart was so intense that he literally couldn't believe what Bai Xiaochun had just done. Then, in a rare moment of intelligence, he shouted, "You were always an earthly necromancer, Bai Hao. You did this on purpose. You knew before you killed Zhou Wudao that you could conjure 18-colored flame. That's why you were so confident. You did it all on purpose. Damn it, you conned all of us. Lu Yang was equally unwilling to accept the situation. Shameless. Despicable, he shouted. Of course, fear had already come to grip his heart. In his attempt to earn a bit of glory for himself, he had been the one to offend Bai Xiaochun more than anyone else. Although not all of the heavenly marquises were completely bowled over, most were. As they shouted, Bai Xiaochun stood there, proud and aloof, looking around with pride as everyone experienced a mental breakdown. Then he thought about how much difficulty they had brought him, and how they had done everything possible to get him killed, and he felt more and more pleased. Now you people know what it really means to be slapped silly, don't you? He said with a thunderous harumph. Think you can fight with me? Think you can casually say that my 18-colored flame is a counterfeit? All of you fools can just shut the hell up. His voice echoed like thunder into the area, causing all of the heavenly marquises who had been shouting and yelling to suddenly close their mouths. With the snap of a finger, Bai Xiaochun could reduce all of you to ashes. Of course, that was what he said in his heart, although he emphasized the unspoken words with the flick of a sleeve. He was feeling so pleased that it caused his skin to tingle. He was now free and uninhibited in a way that he had never been before, not even in the Heavenspan River region. With such thoughts on his mind, he threw his head back and laughed uproariously. It was laughter that acted like needles stabbing into the hearts of everyone present, leaving them feeling so mocked that they almost couldn't handle it. And yet, Bai Xiaochun didn't care how maddened they felt. He wanted them to feel that way. In fact, he felt like he should actually be even more pleased than he already was. Continuing to laugh, he suddenly pointed at Zhao Xianglin. Heavenly Marquis Zhao, what did you say you would do if I conjured an 18-colored flame? Come, get over here, drop to your knees, and kowtow. By this point, Zhao Xianglin's face was a dark reddish purple, and he was gritting his teeth so hard they were about to shatter. At this point, he wished that there were cracks in the ground that he could simply squeeze down into and disappear. The heavenly marquises weren't the only ones to be driven into madness by the 18-colored flame. Chen Haosong and the other heavenly dukes were panting in shock. In fact, there were even some who were looking at Bai Xiaochun with expressions of admiration. Although they had their differences with him, as of this moment, they simply couldn't help but feel some reverence for what he had done. Even they had assumed that there was no way for Bai Xiaochun to get out of the situation alive, and yet he had, and in shocking fashion. Now he had earned the respect that they would only give to someone more powerful than themselves. In fact, to them, it didn't matter if it was true that Bai Xiaochun could already conjure 18-colored flame before everything happened. In fact, that just went to show how terrifying he really was. Not all of the heavenly dukes felt that way. Some had very grim expressions, especially the bearded duke and Chen Haosong, who could do nothing but grit his teeth and refrain from speaking. The frustration he felt was driving him mad. He was a powerful expert in the great circle of the Diva realm. He was a heavenly duke in the Arch-Emperor dynasty, one of the highest positions possible. And yet, he had been thwarted over and over again by Bai Xiaochun, and then in the moment in which he was sure he would end up dead, this happened. One could only imagine how defeated he felt. I can't believe that this kid beat me, he thought bitterly. By now, he knew that it would not be possible to make a move against Bai Xiaochun casually. All he had done was kill a heavenly marquis. Most people would have to pay a heavy price for such an act, but not an earthly necromancer. Although he would face some type of punishment, he would definitely not lose his life. To be an earthly necromancer meant that he had a dazzling level of protection that no one could do anything about. In fact, not even the Grand Heaven Master would be able to kill Bai Xiaochun, not unless he did it secretly. If he did, the common people in the Arch-Emperor dynasty would all revolt violently. After all, in the Arch-Emperor dynasty, earthly necromancers were like rare and valuable gems. At the moment, there were only 3 other earthly necromancers in the wildlands. They were divine dragons who could only occasionally be glimpsed from afar, wanderers who constantly strove to break through to the next level of necromancy. They were legends. They were all focused solely on doing that which had never been accomplished after Arch-Emperor City moved out into its current location, break through to the heavenly necromancer rank. When an earthly necromancer appeared, the heavenly dukes would treat that person with incredible respect and courtesy, and so would the Grand Heaven Master. Anyone who dared to kill an earthly necromancer would be messing with the very foundation of the wildlands. Such thoughts were now running through the minds of the heavenly marquises and dukes, as well as the Grand Heaven Master. The Grand Heaven Master was looking at Bai Xiaochun, thinking about the 2 great services he had performed in the past, and feeling profoundly moved and grateful. Completely stunning, he murmured inwardly. Bai Xiaochun was feeling very, very pleased. This was his most glorious moment so far in the wildlands, and in fact, he was just preparing to do some more things to aggravate the crowd, when suddenly, a deafening boom rang out. It was so loud that it shook the entire imperial palace, and was so shocking that everyone inside Heaven Master Hall looked up, their gazes piercing through the ceiling to observe the sky overhead. What they saw caused everyone's faces to fall. As for Bai Xiaochun, he could immediately sense that something extremely dramatic was occurring in the sky over the imperial palace. Lightning tribulation, someone cried out. It's earthly soul flame tribulation. Hey, wait a second. Bai Hao isn't actually an earthly necromancer yet. You can only be an earthly necromancer after you transcend earthly soul flame tribulation. Ha ha ha, we still have a chance. Before long, Zhao Xianglin and many of the heavenly marquises were shouting aloud in joy. When Bai Xiaochun heard what people were saying, he angrily yelled, like hell you have a chance. He made sure to memorize the faces of all of the heavenly marquises who looked excited, and then took a moment to glare angrily at Zhao Xianglin. Considering how vile Zhao Xianglin was, he immediately decided that from now on, he would make him kowtow every time he saw him. However, now was not the time to be overly worried about Zhao Xianglin. Up in the sky, the clouds had vanished, to be replaced by countless lightning bolts. They looked like tens upon tens of thousands of angry serpents, filling the sky with deafening thunder. The sky now looked like a sea of lightning, covering Arch-Emperor City in a fashion that attracted the attention of everyone in the city. What's going on? Heavens! What is that? How come? How come that looks like the legendary? An aged necromancer in the city suddenly began to tremble violently, and then cried out in disbelief and agitation, "Earthly soul flame tribulation." The city was instantly gripped by a huge uproar. The eyes of all necromancers began to burn with passion and excitement as they looked up at the forming soul flame tribulation. Heavens, that really is earthly soul flame tribulation. The only time soul flame tribulation will show up is when someone forms an 18-colored flame for the first time, and becomes an earthly necromancer. Whoever passes a tribulation like that will then be able to conjure 18-colored flames without ever provoking tribulation again. Who is it? Which Grand Master is stepping into the earthly rank? It's going to happen. It has to happen. And then, our Arch-Emperor dynasty will have a fourth earthly necromancer. The uproar created something like a sound wave that filled the entire city. And soon, word also began to spread to the rest of the wildlands, leading to similar scenes elsewhere. When Sun Yifan and Sima Dao heard about it, they both rushed outside and headed toward the nearest teleportation portals. They were actually more excited than anyone else. It's definitely Grandmaster Bai. It must be him. Throughout the wildlands, all of the celestial necromancers were rushing crazily toward teleportation portals to go to Arch-Emperor City. It was almost as if some great pilgrimage were beginning. Being able to personally witness earthly soul flame tribulation would be of great benefit to them. As the wildlands was being shaken, a serious look overtook Bai Xiaochun's face. Although he had been aware that conjuring 18-colored flame would provoke lightning tribulation, he hadn't ever guessed that it would be so monumentally shocking. If I really fail at this tribulation, then I'm finished for sure. That thought instantly caused his heart to tremble with anxiety. As for everyone else in the hall who had just witnessed the spectacular turn of events, they had now reverted from a state of despair to a state of hope. Without the slightest hesitation, Bai Xiaochun pulled out a heaven-cleaving good fortune pill and popped it into his mouth, pushing his cultivation base to its peak. I refuse to believe that a trifling soul flame tribulation can hurt me now that I can conjure 18-colored flame. He was confident, the reason being, not himself, but the fact that he was in Heaven Master Hall. The heavenly tribulation provoked by 18-colored flame was the type that could shake heaven and earth. A few rare celestial necromancers like the Miao clan patriarch would have ancestral legacies that they could use to deal with such tribulation. But most other celestial necromancers would attempt to conjure their first 18-colored flame in a secluded meditation facility, with spell formations and trusted associates nearby to help them stay safe. To a necromancer who planned to conjure 18-colored flame, it would be an easy matter to get trusted people to help. After all, many powerful experts would be willing to do so as a way to build up goodwill. From the time the Arch-Emperor dynasty had moved locations, down to the modern day, none of the various necromancers who had reached the earthly rank had faced tribulation in the way that Bai Xiaochun was doing. He was actually using Heaven Master Hall as his primary defense. Even as he looked up at the sea of lightning which filled the sky above Arch-Emperor City, it began to pulse, and then slowly shrink. As it shrank, the snake-like bolts of lightning formed together, gradually creating one enormous lightning bolt as thick as a bucket. Then, that lightning bolt descended toward Heavenmaster Hall. This was the true earthly soul flame tribulation. The massive lightning bolt thrummed with shocking power, and when it slammed into Heavenmaster Hall, the entire thing trembled, and then glowed with a spectacular, multicolored light. That light was a powerful defensive mechanism which fought back against the heavenly lightning. Heavenmaster Hall wasn't damaged at all, and as for the heavenly lightning, it transformed into countless silver sparks, every single one of which faded away. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times and then looked over at the Grand Heavenmaster, who sat on his throne with a slight smile on his face. All of the surrounding heavenly marquises had looks of blank shock on their faces, especially Zhao Xianglin, who looked as pale as a sheet. All of them were cursing, but only in their heads. None of them dared to say a single word. Morons, Chen Haosong murmured to himself. It didn't take much thinking to realize the reality of the situation. The Grand Heavenmaster would obviously be delighted to have another earthly necromancer in the wildlands, and would naturally support that person. And such support would be of monumental importance in a moment of crisis like this. Bai Xiaochun also understood that, and was deeply moved. Turning to the Grand Heavenmaster, he clasped hands and bowed. By now, the pride and joy he had felt earlier were gone. The things which had occurred with Bai Hao had caused him to grow up a bit. He also knew that he was now very important to the Grand Heavenmaster. However, just when everyone assumed that the heavenly tribulation was over, the lightning up above seethed and began to grow more intense. Then it shrank down again, so much so that, instead of covering all of Arch-Emperor City, it only covered the imperial palace. Everyone's breath stuck in their chest. It was already obvious that the newly forming lightning bolt would vastly surpass the original one. Intense rumbling sounds could be heard as countless lightning bolts merged together into something like a ball. As the ball of lightning formed, and the various bolts merged together, they turned black. A power similar to the early Diva realm began to weigh down from the black heavenly lightning, growing stronger and stronger until it was equivalent to the Great Circle. Everyone in Arch-Emperor City who could see it gasped in shock. This earthly soul flame tribulation seems different from the way it's described in the records. Heavens, how did past earthly necromancers deal with tribulation like this? Bai Xiaochun was stunned, but didn't worry about it too much. With Heavenmaster Hall to protect him, he assumed he would be fine. Of course, he didn't drop his guard, and in fact, rotated his cultivation base madly as the lightning bolt began to fall. As the black lightning approached, the light surrounding Heavenmaster Hall didn't just act as a shield. It actually exploded out to attack the incoming heavenly lightning. When the two met, a deafening explosion filled all of Arch-Emperor City. Heavenmaster Hall's shield twisted and distorted, and was even shoved downward significantly. However, the heavenly lightning clearly suffered a massive backlash, and soon shattered into countless sparks of electricity that showered down onto the imperial palace. At this point, the sea of lightning began to show signs that it would soon disperse, so Bai Xiaochun decided that it was the perfect opportunity to show off a bit. Looking up with pride, he pointed at the sky and shouted, "Hey! If you've got what it takes, bring it on." In the instant that Bai Xiaochun's words left his mouth, the sea of lightning up above suddenly emitted intense rumbling sounds, and then began to rotate at high speed. At the same time, it started shrinking down. Furthermore, something like a black hole appeared right in the middle of it. The black hole almost resembled an eye, which was staring down at Bai Xiaochun there in Heavenmaster Hall. At that point, the fluctuations emanating out went beyond that of the great circle of the Diva realm. Clearly, the lightning really was going to bring it on. Even the Grand Heavenmaster had a very serious look on his face as he sat there on his throne, frowning slightly. As for Bai Xiaochun, he looked up at the shrinking lightning and the black hole, and his heart began to pound with fear. Me and my big mouth. Oh God, I didn't do it on purpose. Please, don't bring it on. Don't bring anything on at all. He had no idea how previous earthly necromancers had successfully fought back against tribulation lightning like this. As of this moment, he realized that the first bolt was simple, and the second was the type that he could probably defend himself against if he held nothing back. However, the process would have left him very weakened, to the point where the third lightning bolt would be impossible to fight back against. Even a diva would be struck chill in the heart by the sight of it. I screwed up. I really screwed up. As of this moment, he realized that he really shouldn't have gone and taunted God. It was really too dangerous. All of a sudden, he thought back to that time in the Spirit Stream sect when he had been flying along on a sword and been struck by lightning. 1, 2. Everyone else in the hall was gasping, and had strange expressions on their faces. As far as they were concerned, Bai Xiaochun really did have a big mouth. Just when the tribulation was about to vanish, he actually invited it to strike again. Many of the heavenly marquises were feeling quite pleased. However, Chen Haosong and the heavenly dukes were shaken, even more so than when Bai Xiaochun had initially conjured the 18-colored flame. How is this even possible? He says one thing, and the heavenly tribulation came back for him? What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? It's like it's playing games. This Bai Hao has some other secrets. Incredible, unfathomable secrets. Something strange is going on. Even as the heavenly dukes pondered the matter, the sea of lightning up above shrank down into the black hole area. Then, to Bai Xiaochun's shock and terror, a violet gold lightning bolt appeared. It wasn't as large as the other two lightning bolts and looked ordinary in nature. And yet, as soon as the soul cultivators of Arch-Emperor City laid eyes on it, their minds began to spin. The heavenly marquises all gasped, and even the heavenly dukes' faces flickered. Demigod-level lightning tribulation. The Grand Heaven Master was the one to speak the words. Then he shot to his feet, vanishing to reappear outside of Heaven Master Hall. In that same moment, the golden dragon which had fled off into the distance let out a roar as it became a golden beam of light that shot toward the Grand Heaven Master. As it neared, it shrank down, transforming into a golden trident which the Grand Heaven Master grabbed. Even as those things happened, the violet gold lightning bolt from up above began to shoot toward Heaven Master Hall. As it did, deafening rumbling sounds echoed out, and the air around the lightning bolt was destroyed. The Grand Heaven Master's eyes narrowed. Hefting the golden trident, he blurred into motion, heading directly toward the lightning bolt. Boom! A sonic boom rolled out in all directions. At the same time, the image of an enormous, illusory trident appeared behind the Grand Heaven Master. Fully 30,000 meters tall, it seemed large enough to fill all creation as it slammed into the violet gold lightning bolt. Rumble! Arch-Emperor City was shaken by intense rumbling sounds as the violet gold lightning bolt began to shatter bit by bit. Before long, it was gone, and the Grand Heaven Master remained there, not having been injured in the least bit. However, as the lightning bolt dissipated, it created a massive tempest that blasted out in all directions. At this point, the 10 heavenly dukes, despite not wanting to help, realized that they had no choice. They all vanished, to reappear in various locations around Heaven Master Hall. There, they performed double-handed incantation gestures, and then unleashed vicious attacks to neutralize the blast of wind. As of this point, not a bit of lightning could be seen in the sky. Everything had gone back to normal. Back in Heaven Master Hall, Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath, and didn't dare to again provoke God in any fashion. He simply watched as the Grand Heaven Master and the 10 heavenly dukes returned. Bai Xiaochun rushed forward, clasped hands and bowed deeply. Many thanks, Grand Heaven Master. You are truly mighty and grand. At this point, he pondered whether or not he should go into a bit more flattery, but the Grand Heaven Master waved his hand to stop him. Congratulations on reaching the earthly rank, Grandmaster Bai, he said, a politeness in his tone that hadn't been present before. As of this point, the position of Inspections Commissioner doesn't befit you anymore. It would be much better for you to go practice cultivation in one of the Arch-Emperor Dynasty's 5 restricted areas, all of which would be ideal locations for you to seek further enlightenment. Grandmaster Bai, I think it would be wonderful for you to go the Underworld River restricted area. Don't you agree? Bai Xiaochun was now an earthly necromancer, and although he would not be put to death because of what happened with Zhou Wudao, he would still have to provide some sort of compensation. There was no death penalty for earthly necromancers, and it truly didn't make sense for him to remain as the inspections commissioner. Sending him to the Underworld River restricted area would solve the problem of so many people being angry with him, and would also get him out of a major vortex of intrigue. However, the Grand Heaven Master was worried that Bai Xiaochun might not view this as an expression of goodwill. Leaving the aristocracy completely out of the loop, he transmitted a message directly to Bai Xiaochun. Bai Hao, I have a personal division of troops in the Underworld River restricted area, 3,000 men in total. I'll give you command of them. Lay low for a bit until I call on you. After all the arrangements are made, you can return. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times in displeasure. It didn't seem right that he should be made to leave right after becoming an earthly necromancer and achieving new heights of glory. However, what the Grand Heaven Master said made sense. Furthermore, he had already used up his secret weapon. And as the ancient saying went, it is easy to dodge the spear in the open, but hard to avoid a stab in the dark. He couldn't constantly be on guard against every possible conspiracy. Although leaving Arch-Emperor City would cause him to lose out on a bit of glory, it was definitely the best option. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath, clasped hands and bowed to the Grand Heaven Master. I will follow any arrangement you wish, Grand Heaven Master. The Grand Heaven Master smiled and then looked over at the heavenly dukes and marquises. What do you think? He asked them. As for Chen Haosong and the heavenly dukes, although they were sighing inwardly, none of them hesitated for even a moment to clasp hands and say, "We will follow any arrangement you wish, Grand Heaven Master." Considering that the heavenly dukes had already agreed, there was no way the heavenly marquises could dare to voice any displeasure. Bowing their heads, they agreed. As of this point, the conspiracy to have Bai Xiaochun killed had been completely defeated. As everyone left Heaven Master Hall, Bai Xiaochun looked up into the sky and felt freer than ever. Not only had he won a victory, he had done so in spectacularly beautiful fashion. He had entered Heaven Master Hall as the Inspections Commissioner, a person feared by countless individuals, and had left it as an earthly necromancer, someone that everyone in the wildlands would support with wild enthusiasm. HMMMPHH. The Grand Heaven Master called me a Grand Master. Looks like we're both fellow masters. More pleased than ever, he began to walk away. However, it was at this point that he remembered something, and looked back to see Zhao Xianglin, still in Heaven Master Hall, clearly trying to hide from him. Clearing his throat, Bai Xiaochun decided to stay right where he was, blocking the doorway. 1. To forestall any questions in the comments section, I would like to point out that Bai Xiaochun uses a word that rarely comes up in Zhen's works. In addition to God, it could also be translated as heavens or nature, but specifically seems like a term referring to a person in Chinese, which is why I went with God. It's intended to be a colloquial expression and is not supposed to reflect the nature of the world. Universe takes place in 2. BXC was struck by lightning in the last couple lines of chapter 76. Chapter 77 goes on to describe the results. Zhao Xianglin was feeling so frustrated it was a torment. And when he realized that Bai Xiaochun was blocking the way out, his heart swelled with curses, and his face began to turn a reddish-purple color. Obviously, neither staying nor leaving was a viable option. Eventually, the Grand Heaven Master got tired of the situation. Waving his sleeve, he sent Zhao Xianglin flying out of Heaven Master Hall and the Imperial Palace in general. Bai Xiaochun grumbled to himself about that, and then strutted out the door. However, he had already decided that he wouldn't let Zhao Xianglin off the hook so easily. And then there's that guy Lu Yang. Just wait till I catch up with him. Snorting, he hurried away. When Zhao Xianglin appeared outside of the Imperial Palace, he was very moved that he had been spared at the last moment. Employing the greatest speed he could, he hurried toward his clan, stewing in more frustration than he had ever felt in his entire life. The thought of how he had loudly declared in front of all of the aristocracy that he would kowtow to Bai Hao if he conjured an 18-colored flame was like a slap in his face. By the time Zhao Xianglin got back to his clan, word of Bai Xiaochun becoming an earthly necromancer was already beginning to spread through Arch-Emperor City. In the briefest of moments, everyone was talking about it. We finally have a fourth earthly necromancer in the wildlands. A fourth. Even back in the Golden Age, we only had 5. Bai Hao, Grandmaster Bai. Even back when he conjured that faint tongue of 18-colored flame, it was obvious that he would eventually reach the earthly rank. It wasn't just Arch-Emperor City that was shaken. All of the wildlands was in a huge stir as the news spread. That was especially true of the necromancers. Virtually all of the necromancer clans began to do everything in their power to try to reach out to the new earthly necromancer and establish relations. News even reached the Heavenspan River region, and left many people stunned. The 4 great river source sects all placed the name Bai Hao onto their execution list. The reward for his head was incredible. After all, he was now one of only 4 earthly necromancers in existence. To the 4 river source sects, the fact that someone so young had reached such heights ensured that they all felt the need to see him dead. Unfortunately, he was too far away for any of them to do anything about it other than sigh regretfully. If people in the Heavenspan River region got wind of the news, there was no need to even mention Zhou Yixing's clan. Although they were located far, far away from Arch-Emperor City, when they heard about the matter, and learned that Zhou Yixing was one of this Bai Hao's followers, they were ecstatic. In fact, the clan chief issued immediate orders promoting Zhou Yixing to the position of crown prince. The clan elders agreed with his decision, and it didn't matter how disgruntled Zhou Yixing's clan siblings were. In the world of necromancers, being the subordinate of an earthly necromancer was a very important thing. Furthermore, with Bai Xiaochun's help, Zhou Yixing's necromancy had advanced by leaps and bounds. He was now just a hair away from the celestial rank himself. Of course, the proclamation of universal grace had not been rescinded. However, Zhou Yixing had enough power to ensure that there was no fighting or backlash from his relatives in the clan. After all, Everyone in the wildlands also knew that this Bai Hao was the one behind the proclamation of universal grace. Zhou Yixing didn't just rise to prominence in his clan. Wherever he went in Arch-Emperor City, people would clasp hands in greeting, leaving him feeling very pleased. By now, he was absolutely, positively convinced that his original decision to side with Bai Xiaochun had been the best one. If Zhou Yixing was reveling in glory, then there was no need to even mention Bai Xiaochun. Although he was supposed to be heading to the Underworld River restricted area, he delayed and delayed, giving him plenty of time to stroll through the city and appreciate the worshipful gazes people cast in his direction. Furthermore, he would constantly be swamped by visiting necromancers who showered him with congratulatory gifts. All in all, Bai Xiaochun felt wonderful about how everything was going. He also went back to visit the street where his spirit enhancement shop had been located, where he received loads of adoration and worship. Eventually, when he had gone to just about all of the important places in Arch-Emperor City, he thought back to Zhao Xianglin and Lu Yang. Unfortunately, Lu Yang was very crafty. Aware that Bai Xiaochun would try to get revenge, he had long since left Arch-Emperor City and enlisted in the army at the Great Wall. Although Bai Xiaochun was a bit surprised by that, he had to admit that it proved Lu Yang to be a very decisive person. Zhao Xianglin was not as decisive. He merely went into secluded meditation and assumed that Bai Xiaochun would forget about him. Unfortunately for him, he underestimated Bai Xiaochun's tenacity. Bai Xiaochun took daily trips to the Zhao clan, causing problems for everyone, much to the delight of the bastard children. Considering his new status, he was the center of attention wherever he went. All sorts of rogue cultivators sought to become his followers. Most importantly, news of the altercation between him and the aristocracy right before his rise to the earthly rank began to spread. From that point on, whenever bad things happened in Arch-Emperor City, everyone pointed their fingers accusingly at the nobility and aristocracy. Also, because he was the subject of wild devotion by all Wildlander necromancers, even heavenly dukes who had problems with Bai Xiaochun were forced to simply endure the situation. At the moment, he was safer in his position than he ever had been. Therefore, Bai Xiaochun refused to give up on Zhao Xianglin. Unfortunately, the man was like a turtle with his head hidden in his shell. He remained in his heavenly marquee pagoda and wouldn't come out no matter what Bai Xiaochun said. Eventually, Bai Xiaochun started to get angry. "Alright, you coward, do you really think that Lord Bai will just let you hide away from him?" Bai Xiaochun glared up angrily at the heavenly marquee pagoda, grumbling about how ridiculous Zhao Xianglin was acting. He had clearly lost, and yet continued to act shamelessly. If you were a real man, you would do like Lu Yang and go hide on the front lines of the war at the Great Wall. That would at least earn you some of my respect. But instead you hide in a wimpy heavenly marquee pagoda. Well, you just wait and see how I get you to come out. Flicking his sleeve, he went on to visit the other heavenly marquee clans. Whenever he ran into one of the heavenly marquises, he would bluster and brag to the point of inducing nausea. Furthermore, he made a point to hint that as long as Zhao Xianglin didn't come out and kowtow to him, he would stay in Arch-Emperor City. Gradually, the heavenly marquises began to get extremely frustrated and angry with Zhao Xianglin. Eventually, after Bai Xiaochun had threatened virtually all of the heavenly marquises, Chen Haosong sighed and sent a message to Zhao Xianglin urging him to just give in. Zhao Xianglin wanted to cry, but no tears would come. Guts twisting with regret, he braced himself and went to find Bai Xiaochun, to whom he kowtowed in dramatic fashion. Bai Xiaochun was very happy with what he saw. Afterward, he decided to let the other heavenly marquises off the hook. Swishing his sleeve, he took Zhou Yixing with him on his way out of the city. They didn't go to the teleportation portal, but rather, used Arch-Emperor City's heavenly airship, accompanied by a contingent of the Grand Heaven Master's personal guard, as they headed toward the Underworld River restricted area. A huge group of necromancers came out to escort Bai Xiaochun away. As for all of the heavenly marquises, they breathed sighs of relief, and hoped that after he left, he would never come back. Zhao Xianglin had to hold back from breaking out drums and gongs to express his excitement. There were many varied reactions within Arch-Emperor City. As Bai Xiaochun left, he thought back to everything that had occurred there, looked back at the city, and sighed. "I shall miss all of you." When he came to Arch-Emperor City, he was a nobody from Giant Ghost City. Upon leaving, it would have been difficult for it to be in a grander fashion. He was now the opposite of a nobody, one of the most important people in all the wildlands. Many other people in the city were thinking the same thing, and it caused them to sigh. He's the kind of person who you might hate, but simply have no choice but to admire. Chen Haosong said with a sigh. He's the kind of person that only appears every so often in the Arch-Emperor dynasty. Someone who causes waves wherever he goes, someone who reaches the highest pinnacles, someone who no one dares to trifle with. All of the heavenly marquises were sighing deeply. He had kidnapped the heavenly king of Giant Ghost City, and subdued a crowd of chosen in the necromancer kettle. He had dueled celestial necromancers, and shaken down the most powerful clans in his time as the inspections commissioner. He threw all creation into chaos during the ancestral sacrifices, incited the rage of heavenly marquises, made enemies of the entire aristocracy with the proclamation of universal grace, and had become an amazing earthly necromancer. The stories of those things did not fade away because Bai Xiaochun left Arch-Emperor City. In fact, they continued to be told with even more fervor. As he departed, the Grand Heaven Master looked at him go and murmured to himself, "I really want to know why the Hell Emperor picked him." Standing next to him, He Ming murmured, "I have no idea." Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.